Today I'll be going through the topic improving the air quality and specific controls and limits employed in the stationary sources. So what is a stationary source? A stationary source is a fixed emitter of an air pollution, and these sources can have a significant impact on the environment. And in US, the Clean Air Act, the CAA, has specific controls and limits to limit the and regulate the emissions from these sources. So today our group will be doing an economic analysis of different controls and limits employed by CAA. And my group members are Ankit, Yukti, Anisha, Akshita, and myself, Anthony. So to give you a head start, in US, the primary controls employed can be the technology-based standards, with emission trading programs added over time. And depending on two factors, these controls and limits can vary. So the first factor is the age, and the second is the location. So within the first category, age, there are two sources which affects the limits employed, and the first one is the new or modified source. And modified source is something which a source which are modified from an existing source, and an existing stationary source. And limits or controls in the new or the modified sources are more stringent than the existing stationary sources. One of the example is the NSPS, which we'll be going through deeply in the presentation. And in the second factor is there are two areas which affects the limits within this category, and they are PSD areas and the non-attainment areas. PSD refers to the prevention of significant deterioration, and these are the sources where the sources are in an attainment area. And two different limits employed in this area are BACT, which applies to new sources, and second is the BART, is the applies to existing stationary sources. BACT refers to the BACT is the best available control technology, and BART is the best available retrofit technology. And in the non-attainment area, there are two different limits. LAER is the least achievable emission rate. It applies to the new sources. And second one is RACT, is the reasonable available control technology. It applies to the existing stationary sources. So the limits or controls in the PSD areas are more stringent than the limits in the non-attainment areas. So continuing over to Akshita for the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay guys, now continuing to what Anthony has told us, I'll be talking about the bubble policy that exists in the 8th Pacific. Now what is a bubble policy? Bubble policy is a policy that allows a plant to measure its emission as an average of all the emission points emanating from the plant. Now what is emission? Emission is something that is released from one thing, that is basically a pollutant reduced from one source, that is called emission. Continuing with bubble policy, there is a thing called emission banking. Now what is emission banking? Emission banking allows a source to accumulate emission reduction credits if it reduces emission more than required by the law. Then that thing has to be deposited through the banking program. There is a specific limit that is set by the law, and if a plant releases more than that, then that thing or that pollutant, that emission, has to go through the banking program. Now I'll be specifically talking about location specific. Location specific has two things in it. Number one is emission trading in PSD areas, and number two is emission trading in non-attainment areas. Talking about the PSD areas. Now what is the full form of PSD? PSD is basically the prevention of significant deterioration, and in PSD area there is a thing called BACT. BACT is the best available controlling technology. We will be using the best available controlling technology. A new source, it is a new source that has to meet the standards that align with the maximum degree of pollutant reduction available. Now netting, continuing in this, I'll be adding netting. Now what is netting? Netting is developed for PSD areas to allow emission trading among points within a source for the same type of pollutant, such that any emission increases due to modification is matched by reduction from another point in that same area. So, what am I trying to say is anything or any plant that is producing more pollutant, the another plant in that same area has to produce less pollutant to balance out it. Second, emission trading in non-attainment areas. We will be talking about the offset plan in this. Now, what is an offset plan? Offset plan is developed for non-attainment areas to allow emission trading between new or modified sources and existing facilities, such that release from one new or modified source are more than countered by reduction achieved by existing source. To facilitate the plan, an emission bank of accumulated emission reduction credit was set up where facilities could deposit and access offset as needed. Now, we will sort this out stating that emission limits for the PST areas are more stringent than non-attainment areas, and limit for new sources are more stringent than that of those in the existing sources within both type of areas. Yeah. Thank you.
So moving forward from Akshita, I'm going to talk about the acid deposition. The sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, when it is released and which is when it comes and mix and react with water, oxygen and other chemicals, it finally gives a negative outcome, that is acid rain, which is giving a very adverse effect on environment, our lives and everything. And those have three impacts. One, which is impacting the aquatic environment. So those fishes, mammals, everything which are living in waters are being depleted and they are facing a very difficult time these days because of the acid rain. Then plant and trees, because of the sulfur dioxide release, the plant and trees are not getting the exact amount of minerals which they should get it. And when finally comes to human health, those people who are facing asthma are not able to breathe properly. Even the normal people they are facing a lot of trouble because of the acid rain. So the government came with a solution, that is Clean Air Act Amendments 1990, in which they bring up a plan, the program which is known as acid rain program, in which the plants and the big factories can only release 1 ton amount of sulfur dioxide and they cannot go beyond that. And further moving, we can even use the scientific coal, which the scientist has proved that this coal doesn't release that amount of sulfur dioxide, and which is good for the environment. We can use as a substitute in the regular coal, and then we can even use wind and solar power instead of fossil. So these are some of the ways how we can reduce the acid deposition and move toward a better environment. And now I will move towards Anisha and she's gonna take further.
Hi, my name is Anisha and I'm going to talk about uniform based NSPS. NSPS is new source performance standards, which are pollution performance standards set up by United States Environmental Protection Act, which is also known as EPA. There are potentially two problems with NSPS. First being that is distributed uniformly across all firms, and second being that it is technology based, which gives firms no flexibility in controlling the national emissions limit. And the intent of using uniform emission standards was to prevent regional differences in regulations from affecting firms' decisions about which place to locate, which created a market bias. Market bias is also known as a market uptrend. So just as in the case of emission limits in new cars, this particular control and command approach generally disallows the achievement of a cost-effective outcome. So the use of command and control regulation involves the government or similar body to command the reduction of pollution, if, for example, by setting up emission levels, um, and to control the manner in which the cost effectiveness and the control of pollution is being achieved. So I'm going to use this graph to explain the ineffectiveness of NSPS. So these are hypothetically stationary sources, stationary source A and stationary source B. Here I'm using marginal abatement cost curve to explain the cost ineffectiveness. So marginal cost is the cost of producing one additional unit, whereas marginal abatement cost is the cost of reducing 1 unit of pollution. So the A's abatement goes from right to left, whereas B's abatement goes from left to right, and this is the marginal abatement cost curve of A, and this is the marginal abatement cost curve of B. The point where these two intersect is the point X, which is the cost effective point, and this shaded region is the total cost of reaching the cost effectiveness, and due to market distortions and market bias, there's a shift in this point, which is when we reach to A1, and this triangle is added to the total cost. So the total cost effectiveness goes up by this triangle, and that would be all.
Hi everyone, my name is Yukti and today I will be talking about the dual control approach and one more model later on. Both the models are models that were developed to control the emissions from stationary sources. Now let's begin. Now this model, as you can see, has a y-axis and x-axis. On the y-axis we have marginal abatement cost, which is the additional cost for producing each unit of abatement, and here we have the units of abatement. Now this particular model was developed by the states to give more control over or more supervision over those companies over which they have a direct control and dependency. But despite this logic, this model was not cost effective and had many market distortions. Now we will see that later. Now what happens is, in this particular model, the government or the state had two set of standards, the more strict and the more lenient, and the firm will always go with the more lenient standard because they are more easy to achieve and many a times less costly. Now let's say the states have developed an incentive to attract businesses, and so they have given the new technology in the market to create jobs and maintain a healthy economy in the market. So what will happen is the the marginal abatement cost for the new sources would have to be lower so as to attract the new firms to adopt that technology. So as you can see, the marginal abatement cost for the new sources is less than the existing sources. And even then, what happened was that the firms did not go with the newer MAC, but they operated at their additional marginal existing costs at this point, as you can see, and they produce these many units of abatement at this much cost. And those firms that actually thought of the cost is less, so maybe it would be more cost effective, but in reality and ironically it wasn't that way. The cost was much higher than the existing sources, and this was the units of abatement that they had to incur. And therefore the market distortion occurred because there was no incentive for new firms or any existing firm to adopt new technology or new sources, and the market could not obtain a cost-effective solution. And thus we can conclude that the only way that this model could achieve that cost-effective solution is that if the states set EXE2 as the standard of abatement in the economy. That way a firm will have to operate and produce these many units, and this means that corresponding marginal additional cost of abatement cost of the existing sources and the new sources would equal, and then the market distortion would no longer exist. Thank you. Hi everyone, today the second model that I'll be explaining you now is the SO2 allowance trading plan. Now this model was set up in the year 1990, and this was a cost-effective model. Now let's begin. This model consists of two axes like eddy graph, and on the x-axis we have the units of abatement, and on the y-axis we have the MAC, that is the marginal abatement cost in dollars. Now in this particular models there are two things to know. First, the allowances and the abatement. Allowances are the permissible number of units that the government allows you to produce as a firm. Now there is a price for that. For example, to produce 100 units of a particular quantity that emits SO2, there is a particular allowance, and each allowance has a price which is set by the market. Now this is the price that is being set by the market forces, and this is the marginal. Now let's say this is the market price of 1 ton allowance. For 1 ton units, this is the price that is being set in the market. And as you all know, the marginal abatement cost is an upward sloping curve, straight line, right? So this is the MAC for a particular firm. A firm will keep on producing units of abatement as long as the price at which it is operating is lesser than the marginal additional cost at this point, or lower than the price set by the market. Because let's say at this point it still has an incentive to go up and produce more units of abatement, because the allowance in the market is at a much higher level, which means that it has that liberty to go further. But at a point above that, above the price set by the market, let's say at this particular point, the marginal additional cost, the marginal abatement cost will exceed the price, which will not be a beneficial or optimum point to operate on, because the allowance is less and the marginal abatement cost is more, which means that the firm is spending more on abatement than it is receiving from the market as an allowance. So this would be the point at which a firm will stop. It will not go beyond that point. It will only produce A0 units of abatement in the market. Also, any additional units of allowances are an asset for the company or the firm, because if it chooses to do less abatement units and has excess allowances with itself, it can always sell that in the market, because the market has buyers for those allowances. Because there are producers in the market who want to produce more units of a particular product but don't have the allowance or the permission to do that, so they always buy those additional allowances from other producers in the market who have that. Also, the environmentalist also make sure that these additional allowances are not going in wrong hands, so even the environmentalists sometimes buy those allowances so as to make sure that there is no additional harm produced by a particular company or area. So this particular trading plan was cost effective because of many reasons. Because the society is not producing or operating at a point which hampers the environment. It is not going beyond the allowances. It is operating within that limit. Also, the market for trading the allowances is set up in a fair way. People can trade their allowances, and that's happening in a very healthy way. So this plan was a cost-effective plan. Thank you.